Hi guys, I am Vitold, and in this video I'll tell you everything that's making the current Kawasaki Versys 1000 actually an interesting proposition in the big adventure motorcycles category. Many of you may be just as surprised as I was by underestimating the Versys 1000. Nobody really talks about it. There is not much direct competition in this segment, as other big four-cylinder motorcycles are much more powerful than it, and likely because it may seem like it's a bit outdated. Why would I say outdated? Well, only because it doesn't have a huge digital display, I think. Other than that, I don't think that it's in fact outdated at all comparing to all other motorcycles. Seriously, watch and you will see that this brother here has much more to offer than we usually hear. There are areas which I'm just about to show you where it truly shines and can easily be considered one of the best in this segment. But it's not perfect, just like all others are not. Even Jennifer Lopez has some flaws. Small, but they are there. Versys has some issues, but this is not actually the video in which I'll be showing them to you. If you want to get the full view, then please watch the other video about possible reasons for some of you possibly also having to avoid Versys 1000 if some of those things don't suit you and they are deal breakers for you. But don't worry, there is such a video on every motorcycle that I'm spending time with, and it's just to make you aware, fully aware of what you need to make your peace with a motorcycle, or to say definitely that that's a hard pass, no way you can live with that. I also suggest that you test them before you buy, so that you're absolutely sure in the end that this is exactly what suits you and you want to spend your money on that. So let's start with a list of what's best in Kawasaki Versys 1000 SE, especially because please note that I've been riding on the top variant of it. It's called the SE, Versys 1000 SE, and the first reason to buy this current Versys is its behavior, that's especially useful when riding in the city or just at low speeds anywhere, in fact. Now, we start every journey from a standstill, so it's always important in my eyes, and I'm talking about the great stability and balance that Versys 1000 offers. It is really amazing, and right after lifting your foot off the ground, you may keep riding below 5 kilometers per hour and have almost complete control over what the bike does, when and how much it's doing that. It is so neutral and cooperative that it inspires a lot of confidence. But what does it mean in real life? It means, for example, three things in three different situations. First, when you are filtering traffic, so riding between cars, which is what we do here in Europe, and some of you do in Asia, and some of you do in California. So riding a Versys, you can go perfectly straight without fighting the bike, trying to go left and right randomly, and you having to counter it all the time. It is as good as BMW R1250 GS, Moto Guzzi V85 TT, and I think even better than Triumph Tiger 1200, which is already pretty good. And I was really impressed, and that would be super useful and pleasant to me personally in these circumstances. The second thing that you may do with it is stop it from any speed and not have to place your leg on the ground for like 1, 2, or even sometimes 3 seconds after stopping. It is so well balanced. You may just sit on it as if you were still maintaining some speed. It is really, really cool. And the third opportunity of benefiting from that is any sort of low speed maneuvering, like at a petrol station, like making a U-turn, like filtering in a more complex way, riding or changing lanes, also riding behind other vehicles which can go very slowly right in front of you. It is a great feature and I enjoyed it a lot, especially that it was so unexpected to me. The second reason for buying the Versys 1000 may be its smooth engine and transmission. The engine is battery smooth at any RPM as long as you are increasing the RPM and accelerating. About 5000 RPM at constant speed, it vibrates actually very much, but you don't usually keep it in the third gear and at 5000 RPM, right? So it shouldn't be a problem. But right after startup, at very low speeds, and whenever you accelerate, there is no annoying shaking or any sign of nervousness of the motorcycle. The transmission is gentle and also informative, and that's interesting to say. And what I mean by that, weird term in fact, is that it gives clear feedback on whether you've switched to another gear or not. So the travel of the lever leaves no objections, no hesitation, and you're left certain that it works the way you wanted it to work. So you've got the bike in a gear that you wanted it. I like that a lot. That's not a common thing. The engine has 4 cylinders in one line, and this contributes to it feeling so smooth, partially. Another thing that makes that even more obvious is the third point as well, and that is the deep and great sound that literally shakes the ground under the bike. And I'm serious here. You can feel how the surface is reacting to the sound of the bike when being stationary and put on a side stand. Rev it, and you're having a freaking earthquake. And I found it very cool and kind of, sort of impressive at the same time. It sounds likely better than it looks as well. And there's this funny combo of a fairly normally or maybe even not that exciting looking motorcycle that sounds like it was an absolute beast and a bloody tank in one. It stays composed in terms of sound throughout the whole RPM range, and since it does not rev very high for some reason, it never screams like all those sports bikes, hair dryers, whatever you call them. This one is noble and serious, and I actually enjoyed the sound of it. People were turning their heads after hearing the bike, not because they saw it, but because they heard it, and that uneven idle kind of like in an old American V8 engine, that was really cool. I recommend that you listen to that, as if you are a fan of 4-cylinder motorcycles, you may find this one much cooler than the sound of a BMW S1000XR, especially of the second generation. For example, the fourth reason for buying a Versys 1000 may be the level of comfort that it provides. This point isn't as obvious and clear actually, so let me explain that for you. The seat wasn't the best in my opinion, and the bike is not floating super crazily comfortably like a Harley Davidson Pan America or BMW R1250 RT. Yes, I mean RT, not a GS here, that's on purpose, but it's giving you a very good blend of everything that's not causing any issues. I know it's kind of reversed, but the suspension in the road mode is just fine and not too soft and floaty, but also not too stiff at the same time. If you choose the sport mode, it is way too stiff as for my taste. But stick to the road mode, and I think most of you at least should be good. Now combine this with stability that's giving a certain amount of pleasure and confidence, which turn into comfort in the end, in my opinion, and with a smooth engine, transmission and this upright position, and you may have a really decent blend of all that. Now, if you replace the seat with something wider in the front part or just more flat overall, and it will be even better. In the end of the day, I feel that may be a nicer thing to ride than those purely touring motorcycles that usually still don't offer you an upright position and instead force you to lean forward, which not everybody likes. I'm not a fan of that myself. Yes, there are some drawbacks, like the windshield in this case, like no seat adjustment, but overall I think I could live with it and be satisfied. The fifth reason is likely going to be mentioned for the first time since I last rode BMW R1250 GS, and it's that the front suspension doesn't really dive, and that's unusual in this category. It is actually similar to what BMW S1000XR offers, which is also a very street-oriented motorcycle with a 17-inch front rim. And because of the focus on that, both of these bikes have rather smaller front wheel travel as well. Actually, they both have an identical travel of 15 centimeters and nearly also identical in the rear as well. It's around 15 centimeters as well. And this doesn't leave as much space for compression as in most other motorcycles in the category, and lets the front stay more flat for much longer. And in this Kawasaki, I genuinely enjoyed that. It was a nice difference. Let me put it this way. So there is not that much of this yacht on an open sea behavior when braking, and it finally doesn't feel, like hurting the motorcycle when braking. It may not be as good and as flat as BMW R1250 GS, but it is still in the top 3 in my opinion, along with S1000XR. So yeah, that's the setup. The next reason that may sound funny to some of you, or perhaps not like a valid reason for which anyone may ever want to buy a motorcycle, but I feel that it may make a difference to those that prefer this solution. It is an analog rev counter right next to the bike's display. So there's a physical needle moving up and down, and you can clearly see it. There's no lag. You don't have to wait for the display to switch on and register everything and load everything to see it. And it's got more of a soul, I think, and I like it. I just like it. The bike communicates with you physically, kind of, and not digitally. And here I think it suits the bike. If it's not a reason to buy the Versys, or some of you don't even like it, as it may seem kind of old school, then be it. Probably the next Versys, if there's going to be a next one at some point, a new one, it will probably not have it. So I think you might want to rush if you want it, or you will have to get yourself a used one if that's the #1 reason for buying a motorcycle, which I don't, of course, think that it is. So let's move to the last 7th point. And well, if you are a Kawasaki fan and want an adventure motorcycle, this is basically your only choice, especially if you want something in a sick green color that I myself would like very much. The one that I got was in this rather bland mix of graphite and grays, and I wasn't actually a fan of it, but at the same time it hides things that may not be the most attractive from the design point of view of this Versys, if you're not exactly in love with how the big Versys looks. One remark that I've got to add here is that in reality it looks much better than in pictures. And I was thinking that it was very ugly, but once I saw it and how big and how serious it looks, I thought that it may be just ugly at worst. But seriously, that front end may not look the most sleek, and the small front rim may bring sort of weird feelings, but it's better once you see it in person. So I highly recommend choosing to go and seeing it with your own eyes in the real world and not the digital one. And this concludes my list of 7 reasons that I would find there myself to buy the Versys 1000. You may also consider the adjustable suspension that provides a huge difference between the modes and lets you completely change the bike's damping with a flick of a switch by changing the riding mode. I wish I could change it regardless of the riding modes in general, but it's not the video to talk about this. If you want to see the other side of the story, then head straight to the video about what may be deal breakers when considering the current Versys 1000. The link is or will soon be in the description. And that's it from me, guys. I hope that it was helpful to you, and if you already have a Versys, please stick to this video and not the other one, and also share what was there that made you get the Versys, what you like about it the most. All the best now, and see you in the next one.